his purity as a racer. He was cantankerous. He was kind of his own worst enemy, but he was absolutely sublime and brilliant behind the wheel. He could also build any car. He saw himself first and foremost as a mechanic, and he was just brutally honest. You know, he didn't suffer fools at all, and Shelby knew he was the best man for the job, and he proved it. There's a wealth of information that you get when it's a real character, you know, because you're freed up from thinking that you might be making choices that could be construed as egotistical, you know, or trying to, you know, do things that aren't necessarily the best for the film. But when you have a character that's real, you have the mannerisms, you have everything, these eccentricities that they're there for all to see. So you go to the director and you go, look, that's what he did, you know. And it gives you that extra confidence. I actually enjoy it a lot, playing real characters. It's just a thing of triumph for misfits. It's a thing of sort of overcoming corporate politics, the necessity of the sort of Goliath of Ford and the money. I mean, these men could not have done it, just as most artists can't without some benefactor. But also then the conflict within that of achieving it in spite of, you know, Ford, and they challenged God in the guise of Enzo Ferrari, and they won. And these were sort of, they would have been voted the least likely to succeed guys, you know, a bunch of eccentrics, gearheads, and it's just a delightful story and exciting, poignant, really moving. And just, you know, gives me goosebumps every time I see it.
I wasn't familiar with the story, and it was just such a great underdog story, and I love the characters, and, you know, it just, for me, reading a script that good, that is an original story that I hadn't heard before, being able to work with Christian and then have Jim Mangold direct it, that was a very easy decision for me. He's just one of the best actors on the planet, and he's a really generous actor and a really great person, and just, I mean, I adore the guy. It doesn't get much better than that. Carroll Shelby was an extrovert, so he wasn't afraid of an interview. So there was a lot of material to kind of go through to kind of get a sense of his public-facing side. And then I talked to a lot of people who knew him in his kind of quieter moments, and try to get a sense of what he was like away from the cameras. And you know, the movie kind of sees him in both regards, and so I think for me, I'm not really a car person, and the fact that I love the movie so much and not being a car person was a good sign to me. But my way in with Shelby was that he spent his life collaborating with other people to build something that was kind of bigger than him, and that's what making movies is. So I really, on a deeper level, could connect to what it was that really kind of made that guy's engine run, and that was really the way in for me. It's a really nice story and a really positive kind of story to put out into the world right now. I just hope they're really entertained by it. I really felt like it was a crowd-pleasing movie from the moment I read it.
For me, it's a story about the eternal kind of conflict between art and commerce, the effort to try to do something new. You know, as much as the movie's called Ford versus Ferrari, it's a little bit more like Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles versus Ford. Part of it is just, can all these guys get along? This kind of madman corporate team and these eccentric driving types who are trying to figure out how to take on the world's most serious racer in Ferrari. And until they get their own acting gear, they're never going to be able to face Enzo. They're very much what you'd think. They're wonderful guys. They're great to hang out with. They are easygoing and generous actors with all their other scene partners. They're very trusting. I consider them both friends. I've known them both 20 years. So they were both my first choices for this film, and approaching them for the movie was, my only fear was if either one of them passed. But they both loved the idea of working together. And I think you see why. When you see the movie, they have such natural chemistry together. And that's more than anything, more than racing, more than corporate culture, 60s period, anything. The movie's about friendship and the kind of friends we make when we do things together, when we work together, when we risk ourselves together. And I think that was the themes and the ideas that really attracted me to this story. If this movie doesn't please racing fans, none ever will. This is a movie where we recreated to the nth detail every specificity about those races in the 60s. These cars are exact replicas, the stands, the style, the pit crews, the uniforms, the tools are period tools, the engines are accurate reproductions of the engines. So for the geek, it's all there. My goal was also to make a movie that works for the non-geek. For me, the whole thing was to somehow put you in a place that they can't ever do in televised sports, inside the car with characters you care about, understanding they're frightened that they've lost their brakes and they're traveling at 200 miles an hour toward a turn, or they're nervous that their tires are too bald to hold on in this rain anymore, or that their engine is giving out, or that this is their last chance in this lap to ever overtake this other car, and you're feeling the stakes with every lap in the race.
It's a great story about a great time, great characters. It's an unbelievable kind of car racing story, but it's ultimately a story about loyalty and integrity and friendship, and it's kind of, it's an age-old story that kind of crosses into all lines, and it's a relationship movie. That said, I think what Jim's really achieved here, which is really, really special, is a really cogent and detailed look into racing. To play Mr. Iacocca is a wonderful, wonderful honor for me, and I think especially to focus at him at this point in his life, it was an honor and unbelievably intriguing. I think that most people think of him as this captain of industry, this absolute titan, but we're sort of focusing on him at a time when he was young and ambitious and hopeful, and just the beginning of his career. So that was a real thrill for me.
It's David versus Goliath, it's corporate politics, it's Americana, it's these, historical, it's got so many different things. I mean, obviously it's a race car movie, which makes it kind of, there's that fun, thrilling element to it. But at the end of the day, I think the movies that people love so much are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and, even recently, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, these movies about friendship, and these movies where you have these characters who are all going through really hard times and trying to do something very special. That's what this story is. So Leo Beebe was one of the people who was involved in the Ford Motor Company racing program, who was in charge of making these decisions that are super controversial, and what this movie kind of is about in some ways in terms of the drama of it, the problems of it. He was a corporate guy, he was very much a believer in corporate culture, and I think it's kind of an interesting concept with this movie. You go back and see the movie 2 or 3 times, which I've done, it just gets deeper and more interesting, and it gets something you respect more and more, and you kind of want to see it again. I can't wait to see it again tonight. I've seen it 3 times already. I'm going to see it next weekend as well. It's one of those rare movies.
The hidden history element of it is really interesting. I didn't know any of this story, and it's a really interesting little minor but important chapter certainly in the history of car culture in this country. But beyond that, it's a very human story. Had it just been about the cars, the achievement with the cars, I wouldn't have cared that much about it. But the truth is that all of the people in this movie have a lot invested in the outcome, and so it's a great human story of these people pulling together for this thing they did. I'm not a fan of racing, but I think that's one of the great things about it. You don't have to be a fan of racing to appreciate this film, and yet fans of racing are really going to appreciate this film. I mean, there's fast, beautiful cars, and they're real. They're real cars in this movie. It's not just CGI.
For me personally, my dad and granddad were Ford dealers, so I knew about Shelby and all those stories way before the movie was made. So for me to be in the movie, that was quite a thrill. My character is Phil Remington, who was a self-made engineer, inventor, fabricator. He would see what was wrong with the car, he would figure out how to fix it, and he would make the part that he needed to use to fix it. So he was a brilliant guy, and probably my greatest acting job of all time was pretending like I knew a little bit about what I was talking about. You get caught up in these people's lives, and you get caught up in this competition, and at the end I hope it's a thrill for them, but also it's very moving for them.
Christian Bale is the best. I mean, I was pretty terrified into meeting him because he's Christian Bale. But yeah, he's just a regular guy. Hate to break it to you, just a regular guy doing his job really well, I might add. Just being around him, was great, and he's such a fun guy on set, especially with emotional scenes. He can just, crack a joke, and you feel much more, in your skin on set with him around. But yeah, just a wonderful guy, and I learned so much from him from just seeing his work and experiencing that.
Christian Bale is fantastic in this movie, and my character gets to race him at Daytona, and it was an honor. It was an honor to play Walt Hansgen, and who was also an incredible racer. Guy was, in 1957 he was a U.S. Sports Car Driver of the Year by Sports Illustrated. And he was an incredible racer, and Ken Miles was an incredible racer. So was Carroll Shelby, and so Christian Bale kills it. I studied a lot about where he grew up and how he became a racer. Walt Hansgen started racing late in life. He started at 32, and remarkably 2 years later he wins Watkins Glen. He grew up working in his dad's auto shop, and learned a lot about cars, and he just really understood cars. And he became a hell of a racer really fast. When you watch the movie, you're going to feel like you're in the race car. That's one thing that James Mangold, Jim, he made sure to, shoot a lot of stuff from in the car, and you'll feel it when you watch the movie. You feel like you're actually there. It's pretty cool.
Matt, can I get a picture with you? Yeah. Can you get underneath Christian? Christian, right on
Guys, right in front, straight ahead. Hey, guys, together, look up, same time. Christian, together, look up. You got fucking down Christian. Guys, right in front. Man, right in front. Together, guys.
Spin to the right. Gentlemen on your left. Christian. And gentlemen on your left, On the left.
Hey, guys, those three to the right, don't smile.
Gentlemen on your left. There you go. Straight ahead, Christian.
Everybody straight ahead, please. Very tight angle. Right here in the middle. Thank you.
Shelby jacket. That's a Shelby jacket. Thank you.
Carrie. Grace.
And right in front, you two. Nice. And together.
John, down here to your left. John. Hey,
And John, just a little glance right in the center here. Thank you.
John,
sir.
one to the left.
Cheers, mate.
Josh, straight ahead. Mr. Lucas.
Josh, right in front. One more. Josh.
Thank you, sir.
And just a couple right here, dude. No, that smile right there, please. Hold that right there. And one smile, looking happy. And right in front. And right looking up. Mr. McKinnon, sir. Right here, mate. Right, just right. And then
Right
smile.
to your left.
Nice. Little wave up top, Sean. One more look right here. Francesco, right in front.
Francesco, right over here. Right down.
Right in front, right. Straight ahead.
Look back here.
John.
That
John.
smile.
John, right here. Chin down. And to the left, Sean. Straight ahead. Yeah, that's right in front, man. Right in front.
Larson, straight ahead, sir.
Larson, that smile, man. Straight ahead, big smile. There it is. No time. It's not story time. Not story time.
Thank you.
And just a couple shots right here, man. And Ian right here. And straight ahead, sir. I think so. Hello. Thank you.
And Peter, both of you right here.
And Peter, right down the center, sir.
Here.
Guys,
Gentlemen, straight ahead.
Gentlemen, right in front.
Gentlemen,
right in
all
front,
three of
guys.
you,
Straight
right
ahead.
here.
All your eyes. Gentlemen, right in
Down
front.
here in the front. Down in the front.
And on the right in front of you. One more right here. And Bill, if you don't mind, just a few shots right here, sir. Thank you. You know that's gonna be the Bill, one more look. Right here, sir.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Till Thanksgiving, we left work.